Julius Roberts was a drained, exhausted London chef. When suppliers would come to his restaurant and tell him about the produce they'd grown and reared, he couldn't help but notice how happy and healthy they looked. So he took a huge leap of faith.
Being a farmer is hard work, and there's this great quote by John Steinbeck, which is, "What good is the warmth of summer without the cold of winter to give it sweetness?" And I've really taken that on. Like, the bad days make the good days feel so great.
I'm Chris from Canopy and Stars, and this is A Life More Wild. Join Julius and his many animals for his morning rounds on the farm as he discusses nature-first farming, getting bored of tomatoes, and literally facing up to where his food comes from.
I'm Julius, and we're here on my farm. I'm going to take you on what is essentially my morning routine, checking on the animals, bit of feeding, collect eggs for breakfast, and enjoy the morning. All the apple blossoms out, the birds are singing, swallows are back and coming to nest, and I'm just here with my chickens, who they're not a fan of their daily food. It's a very good for them food, and they like a kind of treat every morning. Come on, chick, 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 chick. Chick, 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 chick. We have very wild, just opening gate for you there. We have very wild, rambly, natural hedges. It's a very unmaintained farm. We're all about farming. We call it nature-first farming. So it's not that we're also looking after nature. It's actually that nature is our main priority, and we're using the animals to help nature. And as you can see, a lot of the farm is ungrazed and very wild, and providing a home to much more than just my goats and sheep. We've got incredible biodiversity here, and forever on a mission to increase that. That's probably where our biggest source of joy is, and purpose of the farming. What I might do is, usually my dogs would be with me. It's a bit of a shame for them not to have their morning walks. If we just take a U-turn here and grab the dogs. So I grew up more in London actually, and went to school there, but we always had my granny in the countryside in Suffolk, which was a real, every Christmas, every Easter, every bank holiday we'd be at granny's, and she was an incredible cook, loved foraging, was always making jams, cordials, pâtés from wild animals. She was a pretty cool woman, and it was her that very much inspired me to. Now here, just duck quite low. We're sort of in our bees' flight path, and they always get stuck in your hair. So it's a good place to just go quite low. And then just become left. Yeah. And we'd spend all our bank holidays, Easters, Christmases in the country at Granny's, where we'd have these amazing feasts. She loved bringing the family together to eat. Very European. She was Dutch and had that very European attitude towards food, where it was completely part of her soul, and I really absorbed that. I loved the way it brought our family together and the kind of conversation that it would create, and just the deliciousness. She was a real wizard in the kitchen. So I'd been studying sculpture, got back to London having done quite a sort of experimental abstract sculpture degree, and I couldn't, as much as I wanted to be an artist, I couldn't really see that path panning out. Just didn't look like it would work. So Mum encouraged me to get a job in a local brasserie, which I went for. Got into the cooking world and really loved it. You know, it is like the learning I've had here, the learning you get in a restaurant is incredible. And you know, these chefs, there's so much pride in cooking in the chefs. They absolutely love their career. It's so tough and so relentless that you do have to be so in love with it, like sadistically so, to be able to carry on. So began to very much feel myself wither. I was working in a windowless kitchen 80 hours a week, and it does take its toll. I was grey and pallid and tired, and you know, you're not particularly well as a chef because you do just push so hard. And that's what inspired me to leave. We'd had all these producers turning up at the restaurant every day with their crates of like stunning produce, telling us the stories of how they'd grown it, whether that was a lamb reared on a regenerative farm or a beautiful box of artichokes or tomatoes. And I thought, you know what, their lives just sound so great. They're all brown, twinkly-eyed, healthy, happy, and inspired by what they do. And like, as much as I love the restaurant and working with these guys, like, I don't really want to do this forever, so I decided to make this huge leap of faith. Moved to the countryside, bought 4 pigs, was living near my granny in Suffolk, and that's what began this journey. I suppose the reason we moved from Suffolk to Dorset was Suffolk felt quite close to London, and you really can feel London in Suffolk, or at least where we were. We've got lots of family down here. My cousins all grew up here. I've got aunties and uncles in Bath. So West seemed like a lovely place to go. Great family and friends down here. And I mean, the best thing about Dorset is it's just so rural. There's not a quick train that gets here. It's a good three-hour drive from London, if not more. It's just a kind of lovely nature, outdoors orientated county that has nothing to do with London, nothing to do with that pace of life. It's just slower, very much working with your hands down here. And I mean, you can't see where we are, but I mean, I'm looking out across a seriously luscious green valley that is filled with nature, very loud birds, tons of flowers. I mean, it's a proper piece of paradise, our farm here. My relationship to food's changed a lot. When you've looked an animal in the eye, when you've been there from the minute it was born till the day it dies, and when you've seen just how clever, individual, sensitive, instinctual they are, how similar they are to your dog or your cat, makes you realise that the way they're eaten without any thought at all, kind of gluttonously and so often, is just so wrong. So I eat significantly less meat than I used to. It's always of an amazing quality. I'm a big believer that eat way less, and with the money you save, buy better. And then you're getting animals that have lived outside. They've lived a longer life. They've eaten what they were supposed to. Often they'll be on farms that are kind of working with nature rather than fighting against it. And it will be much healthier for you. You know, everyone wins, the planet, the animal, and you. I picked up seasonal eating at the restaurant. The restaurant was all about seasonality. And now that I grow my own produce, I know the work that goes into it firstly, but I also know, like, why on earth would you eat asparagus in the winter from Mexico or South America when we've got the best asparagus in the world in spring? Just wait. And that waiting makes it taste so much better. The apprehension, the enjoyment of that first spear when you've like actively missed an ingredient is just so great. So I really adhere to that. That's probably my strictest rule. Wait for things to come back in season and enjoy them to the fullest. There's a great thing, like this chef Dan Barber, he says that he wants his chefs to be sick of tomatoes by the end of summer, that they can't wait for pumpkins to come. And I try and live by that. We're at the steepest point of the farm and I've been yabbering the whole way up the hill. But this is my like sitting spot we're about to get to, kind of the apex of the farm. You can look out across the whole valley, you can see right the way to the sea. And yeah, I do this walk every day. Come and check my sheep who are in the top field at the moment. My sheep are Hebrideans. which is a Scottish breed of sheep from the Hebrides, which is these islands on the very north of Scotland. So they're tough as nails. They're smaller, slower growing, very hardy. They now have to look after themselves. I think I made quite good choices when I got my animals, when I got into farming. They're all native, traditional, slower growing breeds who are much tougher than like the more modern varieties of sheep, which are bred to just be fast growing and come with a lot of ailments. These sheep I can kind of just leave to themselves, and they live very long lives because they grow much slower, which I like. Modern sheep that you might get in the shops, you're eating a lamb that's 4 months old, 5 months old. My sheep live to 2 years, so we don't eat lamb at all really here. We eat hogget and mutton, which is slower grown. People think it's tough, but it's not. It's just like knowing how to cook it and make sure it's been aged once they've been killed. This is the main source of the farm, like what gets the income is my sheep. We have about 50-60 lambs a year that we sell as meat, which is tough. I love my sheep and I go to the abattoir myself every single time, and it never gets easier. It's a miserable day that weighs on me for weeks before and weeks after, but it'd be easier to just eat someone else's sheep or someone else's animals, or just eat meat from the supermarket. But I'm a big believer that like my sheep live the best life possible, and if I'm to eat meat at all, I should go through that pain of the end and like look it straight in the eyes and own up to it and be aware of it. It's a real privilege being so close to your food, as tough as it is. It is quite an intensively farmed piece of land. This is dairy country, this part of Dorset. The grass is super lush, it rains a lot, the sun shines a lot, so it does grow very well. But sadly it is taken up by quite a lot of intensive dairy farming, which is a tricky subject. I think farming is a very noble profession, but the intensification of it has destroyed a lot of nature, and I do worry about that. Our farm doesn't necessarily create that much food compared to an intensive farm, but it does provide a lot of home for nature, and I think that's really important, and we need to find a new balance where humans are being fed, but the food that they're being fed doesn't cause as much damage, and the animals live good lives. I think cows living inside their entire life being fed grass that's been cut and brought to them, used as essentially machines to just pump out milk, is not a great existence, and I would love that to change. Very tricky because the farmers work their asses off. They've been put in a very difficult place by the government and the supermarkets, and they've been working themselves to the bone for their entire lives, generationally. So and they get a hard time for it. I think we've got to be very careful and support them and encourage a change through hope and it making sense for them. Eating seasonally is it's very second nature to me because I grow my own stuff. You can't eat chard until the chard has grown. If you're buying in the shops, let's say you're in a supermarket, which I don't love, but that is how a lot of people eat, and that's how I eat sometimes too. Looking on the packets and seeing that something's been grown in England is a great way to eat seasonally, because that means it has to have been grown in the climate as now, and it will have been transported to that shop pretty recently. Going to the markets, you just will have produce that has been grown at that time. But just knowing, summer is courgettes, tomatoes, aubergines, chilies. Make the most of them while they're around. Winter is turnips, potatoes, beetroots, carrots that have been stored. All the lovely cabbages, Cavalier Neros, Brussels, kales, all that kind of stuff. Spring is all the super green things: peas, asparagus, broad beans, lovely gem lettuces, artichokes. I don't know, it's just like instinctive to me. But looking on the labels and buying things not in packets because they're from a farmer's market is a pretty good way to eat seasonally. And just, I think getting in touch with all that stuff is so fun. Also, just growing your own at home is a great way to start. I've got this beautiful farm and I couldn't be luckier, but you can grow anything on a windowsill, on a balcony, on your roof, on your doorstep. Buy some seeds, put them in some compost in a pot, and it's very easy to grow something, and you'll see, when it's cold, that thing doesn't like to grow. When it's warm, it grows really well. It's kind of as simple as that. I think the issue with the food industry is that it's been created around you can have that whenever you want it, and that's not how food grows. And, especially when that comes to meat, meat needs to go back to being a luxury. I think that's the biggest mistake we've made, is that we've got used to eating meat every day, 3 times a day, eggs for breakfast, bacon for breakfast, sausages for lunch, beef for dinner. And that just takes such a toll on the world. It takes, as I said, it takes me 18 months to grow one lamb, one sheep. And they take up a lot of space, and they take up a lot of energy, and they take up a lot of work, and they also morally are a living, thinking, sensitive being, and they should be treated as such. To create a world where we can eat meat as much as we want and as often as we like, it's had to be intensified, and that means animals living in barns away from nature, and the nature being sucked dry to feed them, and there not being that much room for other things which really matter, like trees and birds and other species which provide us with clean air, which provide us with lovely bird song, and butterflies to look at, and all sorts of things. I think the way we eat has got so big and so consumerist that it's taking over the world. And a really sad stat that I know is that the extinction rate, so there's a natural rate of extinction that happens across the world, but it's 1,000 times what it should be, and that's because of us and the space that we take up and that our food takes up. And I think we need to just give a bit more room back to nature, and the way to do that is to eat less meat, is to eat better meat, is to eat seasonal veg, and also not to waste food. That's a big thing that's gone wrong. I think 1/3 of the food produced is wasted, which is a monumental amount. Monumental. A really way to think about it is that we are lucky to have the food that we have, and it shouldn't be, it should still be special. I think you should, food is a luxury. There are people in the world who are starving to death and who struggle to just get water. Food needs to be thought of as special again. I think we need more connection to it, more love for it, and more respect for where it came from, and more thought into that, the importance of that. Definitely lunchtime, so we've got to make our way back down the hill, cross the ravine, and when they start hearing and seeing us, they're going to make one hell of a fuss for their milk. If you're here. So I'm just making the milk for my little goats and sheep. Spilling milk everywhere. Do this at the beginning. You're bottle feeding 6, 7 times, 8 times a day in really small amounts because they've got small stomachs then. Now they drink quite big bottles 3 or 4 times a day. Lammy! So here's the hen. Oh, there he is. Hello, boy. How are you? Come on then. Come on. Come on. Come on. So here's Lammy, first in line. Turnip right behind and Radish at the back. Right, okay. And then it's a bit of a juggle because I try and do all 3 at once. So I always, here, look, focus. Radish. Goats in one hand. Sheep in the other. Come here, buddy. And then on the side of the big coop, I just open up and we've got some nice fresh eggs. And often when I come out and grab these in the morning, they'll still be warm. The best thing about fresh eggs is they're so easy to poach. If you crack a fresh egg into a pan of water, it will literally not change shape. That's turnip eating a hen's feathers. He's about to get a peck for it. Yeah, you tell him. This is Henny. We call her, not the most original name. But that's 6 eggs. We get about 6-7 eggs a day, which is hard to keep up with. Often the dogs have eggs for dinner as well, when we've got too many. And so in the mornings I do that routine we've just gone through, and I'll finish by grabbing a couple of eggs and having an egg on toast or egg fried rice, and there's a lot of ways to have eggs when you have them every day. I'm a big believer that cooking eggs is always a race. You want hot toast that's not gone like too hard or soggy by the time you've got the eggs cooked. But you don't want to burn the toast because you're too distracted by the eggs. The eggs have got to be right. I love the race of making breakfast. Special. These are the swallows that are just coming back. We have this duo of swallows that nest in the porch of the house every year, and we don't use the front door all spring just to make sure we don't scare them off. It just blows my mind, isn't that? An animal flying from Africa to come and nest in our porch. And yeah, we're back where we started. Animals all well, lambs fed, and eggs for us. Laid today. Yeah, I mean that is an egg from a hen who I feed every single day. I say hi to every single morning. I give her her oats, and she walks freely around the house, protected by the dogs, eating all sorts of grubs and slugs and snails and flies, and produces very golden, delicious eggs for me to have for breakfast. Circle of life.
While we can't all make the leap to running our own farms, effective change to our eating habits can be as simple as cutting down, seeing things like meat as a luxury, and thinking more about where we buy our food. Next time, we're going from working with animals on the ground to taking flight and joining them in the air in the company of Sasha Dench, aka the human swan. She'll be telling us about tracking birds across Russia in a paramotor, reindeer blood pancakes, and getting a warm welcome in the cold Arctic Circle.